Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and Ryujinx series. Who did Nintendo sue or go after this week? And unfortunately, it's getting even worse and even sketchier out there. Because obviously we talked about Ryujinx shutting down because of Nintendo, but now in the last 5 or so days, it seems like Nintendo's going after a lot of different people for very innocuous things, such as using Switch emulation when they're streaming or showing games, or even showing how to emulate it in the first place, an activity that would be considered legally permissible. And while the law might not be on Nintendo side, they're definitely going to lean on you to do what you want, because obviously we've already talked about in the past Yuzu being dead and Suyu being dead, and now Ryujinx has joined the casket party and they are no longer in active development. But now Nintendo's taking a whole new front on this, and it is probably the worst. They're going after streamers and YouTube makers when it comes to their content and how they would like to be seen, and that is really unfortunate. Retro Game Court has got not one but 2 strikes on YouTube from Nintendo for showing their properties in emulated videos. Even if he puts the game on screen, even if he shows it running on real hardware next to the emulation, he's taken 2 strikes for this right now. And if you're not aware, on YouTube, it's a 3 strikes and you're out policy. I talked to him over on Twitter. He's got a huge channel. Definitely check it out. I'll leave a link in the description below. Does a lot of good stuff with emulation handhelds, 10 out of 10 content, but obviously his audience is to the size now where you can't risk that 3rd strike. Obviously I am a much smaller channel, but I still put a lot of work and time into this, as obviously does Retro Game Core. So when you start seeing these strikes come in, you start thinking to yourself, my body of work, all the years of effort I put into this could be gone because I've upset somebody. The first one came across on the MIG Flash version 2 cartridge dumper, and that kind of makes a tiny bit of logical sense, even if it would be considered legally permissible to show people how to back up their software, because US law gives you the right to make a copy of your software for your own preservation purposes within the confines of your own home, or basically collection. Basically what Nintendo is saying here is, if you want to show our games, it has to be on real hardware, and I understand why Retro Game Core would be a little reticent of actually doing a counterclaim, because obviously when Nintendo wants you to feel pain, they're going to make sure they extract every last ounce of pain out of you. They're going to bottle your tears, and they're going to mix them in a martini later on that evening. And you'll see here, this was the first of the 2 strikes to come across. We're going to go over the second one in just a bit, but I kind of want to mix and match this up just to explain just how weird this really is. And big thanks to Mr. Sujano. He mentions my videos now and again, so I'm going to mention his as well. He is a man whose voice sounds like a hug from your grandfather in the best way possible. But all jokes aside, he discussed the fact that an even larger streamer and YouTuber received a notification to remove videos from Nintendo because they detected the use of unauthorized Nintendo Switch game emulators, namely Yuzu and Ryujinx. And it's funny that Ryujinx is already showing up in these emails. What Nintendo is saying here is, if you use emulation to stream or showcase our games, we consider that a violation of our copyright, and we're going to copyright strike you. So showing something like The Legend of Zelda here running on a Nintendo Switch, totally fine. It is in the video. You can see the real hardware. But what they are trying to do now is get rid of any showcasing of footage that would be on emulation. And how are they even detecting that? I'm sure it's because it's either running at a higher frame rate or a high resolution, because it does improve on stock Switch performance. So we don't know where this is going to end. If you showed emulated footage of something like an NES or Famicom game, are they going to hit you? We really don't know right now, and that is a very scary situation. So if I show you something like the Sharp Twin Famicom here with a copy of Super Mario Brothers or Super Mario Brothers 2, and then move over to the capture and you can tell it's on real hardware, is that what Nintendo is saying we need to do moving forward? No emulation, or else they're going to consider it a violation of their copyright and IP? The question is, I have absolutely no idea. Who knows whatsoever? Or even showing something like a Nintendo Switch game here, the Haunted Castle remake from Konami and M2. Is this going to be okay to show if you're using a software emulator? Absolutely no idea. This is real footage running on real hardware, but how would they tell? Obviously in a game like this, you could probably scale it a little bit higher and no one would actually be any the wiser in the background. But obviously moving forward, I would recommend to everybody, if you're going to talk about Nintendo Switch games, especially ones made by Nintendo, you've got to be capturing it on real hardware, because they do allow you to talk about their games. The whole Nintendo partner program is dead by now, but you never know what they're going to bring back. But back to Retro Game Core, the first one was on that MIG Flash card video, and I understand Nintendo's sensitivity on something like that, even if I do not agree with it, because they have talked about piracy, and obviously that does lose Nintendo money. but using a device to back up the software you legally own so you can play it on hardware you purchased is something that is 100% allowed based on US law, and it doesn't matter how much Nintendo would like that not to be the case until they actually go to court potentially and have that overruled and a new precedent set. They have to abide by the laws just like everyone else does. They can go after the makers if they feel like it, that's totally fine, but backing up your own software is considered totally fair use. Now, as far as the second video, that was on an emulation tutorial on the Wii U. Now, my second bit of advice, having gone through all of these different things, is if you're going to do any sort of emulation tutorials, just do not show any Nintendo games whatsoever. Show third-party games, maybe even show a clip of the Wii U in the game in the clip before you translate over to the actual emulation. That way you can demonstrate that you own it and you're legally permissible to do that. But is that even going to make any difference? We have absolutely no idea what Nintendo is going to do next. We just know that they don't like what's currently going on, and it really doesn't have anything to do with the current laws on the books because Nintendo knows they can't really stop anything from happening. But what they can do is try to stop and put the pain onto people that are actually showing you how to do this in the first place, and that seems to be the next front in their war against anything software emulation. If you show somebody how to use something that they should be able to use and are legally allowed to, Nintendo can and will go after you and try to remove your voice from whatever platform you're on, whether that be Twitch, whether that be YouTube, things such as that. And that really is the thing. This is Wii U, obviously it is a console generation old, but Nintendo does like to port their games over to it. And you can see here, I'm playing a Switch, I'm playing a Wii U. This would be totally fine in Nintendo's eyes as far as I can tell, because you can tell these games are running on real hardware. But if at any point in time I wanted to run them non-target hardware style, I definitely wouldn't show a Nintendo game in the future. Nintendo's going to find you, they're going to beat you over the head, and they're going to bloody you up until you finally do give up. Although I will say this was captured on a real Wii U as well. Generally for these sort of franchise series or retrospectives, I do use the real hardware. But this is what Nintendo is doing now. They're going after channels that are showing any sort of emulation whatsoever. Obviously, if they're not doing it to every single channel, you would know about that if it was, but they're going to go out there and pick and choose who they want to bother next. So let's take a look at a statement from a Nintendo representative back in May 29, 2023, where they specifically used the term illegal emulators. I told you almost 2 years ago that Nintendo wants to make all emulation illegal. They do not want you to be able to play any games from their hardware without giving them money. If you want to emulate NES, if you want to emulate Super Nintendo, they think that should not be permissible. And everyone yelled clickbait, they yelled scaremongering, they said everything in the comments that basically made it seem like I was trying to scare you guys into something that wasn't going to come to pass. But everything I have said, everything I have predicted sadly has come true. And obviously the laws on the books to make emulation legal exist, but they're not the most comprehensive decisions ever, and it doesn't stop any company from trying to file a new lawsuit, go before a judge in some jurisdiction, maybe one friendly to them in the US, and try to get a new precedent set as to whether or not emulation would be legal. This is what we're currently dealing with. Nintendo's trying to do a death by a thousand paper cut situation right now, going after people talking about something they don't want them to talk about, and just trying to stifle their voice so that you can't actually find out how things are done. But if that doesn't work and they feel more threatened, they're going to go further than they have before. Even if you have an argument of fair use, again, Nintendo's legal pockets are absolutely cavernous when it comes to cash. It's perfectly fine if you want to show something like Crash Bandicoot 3 running on a Steam Deck with the game and the footage. Sony's not going to bother you. Naughty Dog won't bother you for the most part, but if you do it with Nintendo now, we have evidence that they are going after people just for showing emulated footage, even if it isn't in a tutorial, and that is absolutely terrifying for a lot of people. And of course, when it comes to actually doing tutorials, really right now is I wouldn't touch these. I'm doing Emulation Night School right now. We're going to be having some more episodes soon, and I am removing the Nintendo episodes from that series until I feel confident I can actually launch them. And if I never feel confident, I'm just not going to show you how to do it. Is that what Nintendo wants? Absolutely. Is it disappointing I would do that? It is to me, but I spend a lot of time on this channel as does everyone else, and I don't need that hassle in my life, and this is how Nintendo wins. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, but we're done and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.